I'm Starborn. Remember, to be a star, you have to shine your own light, follow your own path, and not be afraid of the darkness, because that's when stars shine brightest. Tonight's show is a special show that I do once a year at the start of every year, and it will cover the new moons and the eclipses month by month for the whole year of 2019. And then next week's show is going to cover the sun sign predictions for all of 2019. And so, in a broad sense, 2019 is a building year, and that's why that is the title of it. So if you've been looking at our website, starborninstitute.org, you would always know that there is an additional bit of information in a blog, and you should look there as well, because I might not be able to get all the information out tonight, but I will on the website instead. And so if 2019 is supposed to be a building year, it's going to be because of the way the eclipses are set up. There are 5 eclipses in 2019. There are no triple eclipses, though. There is not going to be quite the amount of social unrest and change as there was in 2018. But of the 5 eclipses, 3 of them are in Capricorn. And Capricorn is the traditional ruler of the 10th house of your career and public reputation. And it governs large corporations and government agencies, and sometimes the leaders at the top of them. And the reason why we're going to have a building year in 2019, so if you've ever had a dream that you thought you might get started on, this is the year to do it. Because there will be 3 planets in trine to each other all year long that are very slow moving. In other words, they're not going to leave those signs, and they are going to be very, very powerful. And it has never happened like this in our lifetimes, because the speeds of these slow planets are so different that they haven't lined up like this in our lifetimes. And so by March, Uranus, the planet of sudden surprising change and eccentricity and rebellion and the future and things ahead of their time, will come out of Aries, where it has been retrograding. It will go into Taurus for 7 years. And Taurus is a fixed financial sign, so it won't be a good idea to gamble too much in the next 7 years, because Uranus is so volatile. And it will be trining 2 planets that are in Capricorn already, Saturn and Pluto. But by February, Saturn and Pluto, which are extremely slow movers, Pluto is the slowest one, are going to begin to conjunct each other. And when they do that, it is going to empower both planets even more, because you can't break the force of a conjunction. And they will be trining that Uranus in Taurus, and together those 3 slow-moving planets that aren't going anywhere are going to be trining the sign of Virgo as well. And that's why it's a building year, because earth signs like to work hard. They like to get in there, and no matter what they do, they like to have something to show for it. So that is why there are things that can be built this year, but it is going to require a slow process, not a fast one. And another reason that that can be slow this year is because there's only one major planet changing signs, and that is Jupiter. And that will be at the end of the year. On December 3rd of 2019, Jupiter will leave Sagittarius, and it will go into Capricorn as well. So the emphasis is on the things that Capricorn rules, or that the earth signs rule. And so what does all this mean in the month of January? Well, guess what? We start the spring eclipses right away. In fact, in 3 days, on January 6th, there will be a solar eclipse at 15 degrees of Capricorn. And that means that the sun and the new moon and Saturn and Jupiter will, Pluto will all be in Capricorn, and they are very, very strong. So there can be quite an emphasis on business and on rules and regulations and on government policies. And because these planets in Capricorn are going to be squaring Mars, which will have moved into Aries, and Uranus in Aries as well, it simply means that some new beginning is really going to hit a brick wall. And that's because the force is in Capricorn. Capricorn rules traditional ways of doing things, things that have succeeded over time, because Saturn is the ruler and Saturn is the planet of time. So there is going to be some new beginning because Mars and Uranus are both forcefully in Aries, but they're coming up against this solar eclipse and they are really going to hit a brick wall. So something's going to change. These things that I'm describing may occur at a very high level. Maybe they won't directly affect you and I, but you need to keep them in mind because there can be events in 2019 that change and are beyond your control and which you will have to adapt to. And there's nothing you can do about it. So it can be that the law is upheld right now, and that can be traditional law. And then 2 weeks later, on January 21st, there is a lunar eclipse at 1 degree of Leo. And this is nice because Venus and Jupiter in Sagittarius are trining this lunar eclipse, and Venus and Jupiter are actually conjuncting in Sagittarius. That's a marriage tie. So there could be a lot of people that have marriage on their minds. But you know, under a lunar eclipse, we know it's a full moon and the moon opposes the sun. So we generally say one woman goes and another woman comes. And that could be happening. And it could be something where somebody is moving on or traveling on or changing in some way. Sagittarius does rule travel. And it could be a better time to make some sort of new start or to change conditions so that a new start could be made instead, maybe at a later date. But this lunar eclipse does denote that there can be some sort of change in the things that Leo rules: children, sports, the entertainment world, leadership, certainly any kind of fun or parties or whatever that end up in celebrations. So, and it could also involve gambling of one sort or another because that's what Leo rules. But this is not the year ever to take a gamble. In fact, not for the next 7 years. And that is because Uranus by March will be in Taurus, squaring the sign of Leo for 7 years. So don't take undue financial risks if you can. Okay, what does it mean in February? Well, on February 4th, there is a new moon at 16 degrees of Aquarius, and Aquarius rules the future. But you know, the emphasis is on what is going on behind that new moon, and behind the sign of Aquarius is the sign of Capricorn. Venus will have moved into Capricorn by then. It will be joining Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, and in February, both Saturn and Pluto do move into, they begin to conjunct, they begin to start a conjunction, and it remains for the whole year. And so these are going to be really powerful planets. And even when they go retrograde in the summertime, they both do that at the same time and they stay conjuncting. But with Venus in the sign as well, it really does mean that the law is upheld, or that traditional values are very important. And they really can't be changed because they worked out so well in the past, which is great. So the good thing that comes out of the new moon in February is that it trines the sign of Libra and of Gemini. And that means there could be some nice discussions going on about a possible settlement or a compromise or plans that could work out in the future. Okay, what does it mean in March? Well, in March, on March 6th, there is a new moon at 16 degrees of Pisces. Pisces is a double-bodied mutable sign. Its symbol is the two fish that are swimming around in a circle. One of them is sort of aiming pretty high and the other one is sort of going low. And so there is the possibility that somebody could have second thoughts in the month of March. And it could be at a very high level, or it could be someone that you know. Because as people have second thoughts under this new moon in March, it simply means that they could be sort of changing their mind in one way or another. They could have been set on doing something and then they may be reconsidering, simply because there is such an emphasis in 2009 on practical matters. And maybe they hadn't quite considered all of those. So that's why they could be having second thoughts. At the same time, there is some sort of miracle that could occur. And the reason why is the new moon is at 16 degrees. And that number, 1 plus 6, equals 7. 7 is the number of mystery, and miracles are mysteries. But 7 is also the number of Pisces. So there can really be a little bit of change going on behind the scenes there. And if people have second thoughts, maybe that's a good thing right about now. All right, what does it mean in April? Well, on April 5th, there is a new moon at 15 degrees of Aries. And it is an alarming new moon. And the reason why is that there can be an unfortunate new start that doesn't last. And the reason why it doesn't last is because that sun and new moon in Aries are coming up against these staunch planets that are in Capricorn that represent time-honored tradition and things that are done in a slow and methodical and time-proven way. So they have been very successful over time. So anyone who's wanting to make a sudden new start is really not going to make it. But I think they are going to make the new start. The new moon is in Aries, not in Capricorn. But it's going to be an unfortunate one, and it is not going to last, which is too bad. And so what does it mean in May? Well, on May 4th, there is a new moon at 14 degrees of Taurus. By this time, Uranus has moved out of Aries, it's not there anymore, and it has moved into Taurus. And so we have the sun and the new moon, which is exalted in Taurus, and Uranus in Taurus, and all three of those planets are beautifully trining the planets in Capricorn. And this is when, if you're going to be building something and you're trying to figure out what it's all going to cost, or you're thinking of changing careers or adding on to your home or starting a family, whatever it is that you've got in mind to sort of build in 2019, this is when you could get some really concrete ideas written down. You may even be able to be working on a budget in anticipation of a whole lot of different costs. You also should leave a little money for the great unknown, because that always happens in a new venture as well. But this is a very powerful new moon in Taurus. And it means that a lot of people have their mind on money, either on their investments, because that's what Taurus rules, or on their retirement, and that's because that's what Capricorn rules. Or they could have their mind on the high cost of health care, because these planets in Capricorn and Taurus are trining the sign of Virgo. And so that's good, because people are getting really practical about practical matters and about financial matters. And that's a good way to be this year, because, you know, you can't make a dream come true if you don't have it pretty well planned in advance. Okay, what does it mean in June? Well, in June, there is a new moon on June 3rd at 13 degrees of Gemini. And this is a time when there can be a lot of talk about some new deal, or about some sort of compromise, or even the possibility of some sort of short-term settlement or trial period that a lot of people are open to at this time, which would be good. But at the same time, there can be matters at a distance, either a distance from you or halfway around the world from wherever you are right now, that could be working out sort of on their own and in counter to what your ideas are. So this is not a time when you can really get a great idea underway, but this is a very good time to present one. And it's a really good time to try to straighten out partnership issues or legal issues, because that new moon in Gemini is trining the sign of Libra and Aquarius, which rules the future, which would be great. So it is a good time to communicate and talk and even compromise a little bit if you can. Okay, what does it mean in July? Well, in July, we come into the summer eclipses, and they're pretty strong, because on July 2nd, there is a solar eclipse at 11 degrees of Cancer. It's 2 days before the 4th of July, so it's right on America's sun sign. And so it is very good for America. There should be some really good news at that time. But it is not good for politicians, and it's not good for people who sort of want to hog the limelight or try to control others. That may not go over too well, because there's going to be a tug-of-war around the start of July, and it will be a tug-of-war between the demands of your home and your family and the demands of your career, or even some new career that you're trying to build. So you're going to have to be a pretty good time manager around that time, but it is very good for America, and it's right on America's sun as well. It could also be very good for the whole North American continent, because the whole North American continent is only ruled by water signs. Canada and America are ruled by Cancer, and Mexico is ruled by Pisces. So it might be good for all three. Okay, oh, and then 2 weeks later, on July 16th, there is another lunar eclipse, and it is at 24 degrees of Capricorn. It's the second Capricorn eclipse of the year. And Capricorn rules time. And remember, it's a lunar eclipse, so it's a full moon. And it generally will denote that one woman goes and another woman comes. It doesn't have to be at the same time, but that's the process that it denotes. And this could be a time when some woman, it could be anybody, but there's a possibility that a powerful woman could fall from grace, or she could just leave, or she could resign, or she could step down. And the reason why is that it's time to go, and she knows it, so she does it. And so it could happen right around then, right in the middle of July or the middle of summer. Okay, what does it mean in August? Well, in August there are 2 new moons. You get 2 chances to make new beginnings, because on August 1st there is a new moon at 9 degrees of Leo. And so that's pretty good for the things that Leo rules, because remember, all year long, Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and it's the ruler of that sign, is trining the other fire signs. It's trining the sign of Leo, and it's trining the sign of Aries, clear up until December 3rd. So they've got a lot of support. And so this new moon is an indication that there can be some activity going on that greatly benefits either children, or there can be some sort of heady atmosphere and excitement about the sporting world. There could be a lot going on that people can be rooting for in that, or the entertainment world, or there can be, Leo rules love affairs as well. So since it's right in the middle of summer, it's a pretty jolly time for everybody. And it's well backed up. So there may be a little bit more traveling going on, particularly long distance travel at that time, but it would tend to work out quite well. And then on August 30th, there is a second new moon, and it is at 7 degrees of Virgo. And this is a really good new moon. It's a great one, in fact. And the reason why is there are 5 planets in Virgo at that time. Virgo is the traditional ruler of the 6th house of work and health. So we know healthcare is going to get a lot of attention this year because it's so well aspected. So I think it could only improve. That would be pretty nice. And so those 5 planets in Virgo are trining Uranus in Taurus, and they're also trining Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. There are going to be a total of 8 of the 10 planets only in the earth signs, all harmoniously trining each other by the end of August. So that's going to be right around the Labor Day weekend as well. And that simply means that if your building idea sort of got off the ground sometime this spring, or you got your facts together in one way and your budget in one way or another, this is the time by the end of summer that the building could really get underway, or you could be ordering supplies, or you could really be getting ready for that. And as long as you go slowly, the way these slow planets are moving that are in trine to each other in earth signs, despite any setbacks or delays, you could be very successful. Not an overnight success, but a lasting success. Those always take a little bit more time. Okay, what does it mean in September? Well, in September, there is a new moon on September 28th at 5 degrees of Libra. And so there can be some final settlement or a peace offering or something that is going according to the law. The law will be upheld, and it will be upheld over some very grudging objections. It's like not everybody is going to agree to having the law upheld, but it will be. And the reason why there can be grudging objections to that, but remember that the strength is in Libra, and it trines Aquarius, and it trines the sign of Gemini. There can be more people that are in agreement about this than actually are making any comments, but they can be very supportive of it. The reason why there can be grudging objections is because of the planets in Capricorn. All the planets in Libra, I think 5 of them then, will be squaring Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. And that's why there can be grudging objections to having the law upheld at that time. Okay, what does it mean in October? Well, in October, on October 28th, there is a new moon at 4 degrees of Scorpio, and there are 4 planets in Scorpio, and they're trining Neptune in Pisces, so that actually makes 5 or half of all the planets are in water signs, which is great. It simply means that justice will be done, because that's what Scorpio rules, but it also means something else. It means the financing is there. In other words, if you got everything together as far as building something goes, and you've gone as far as you can doing things really inexpensively, then it might be time for you to make sure you've got enough financing to finish your project. And certainly there will be additional financing or funding by that time, because Scorpio is a very strong, that's a very strong new moon in Scorpio at that time, which is good. So that will be good for America as well. Okay, what does it mean in November? Well, on November 26th, there's a new moon at 4 degrees of Sagittarius. And I think at this time, since Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, is getting very close to the end of that sign, it'll be at the 29th degree of fate in Sagittarius at that time, because on December 3rd, it's going to go into Capricorn. So at this time, under the new moon in Sagittarius with Jupiter there, it simply means that some sort of legal matter that involves unfinished business is finally wound up. It's done, and it comes to a conclusion, and that's sort of the end of it. It's probably long overdue to come to a conclusion, and it can be with the hopes of sort of reinstituting peace. Since Sagittarius rules the Middle East, it might be some sort of peace overture in the Middle East, but it is a little legal matter that involves unfinished business that finally winds up, which will probably be good for all of us. However, because there are planets in Capricorn right ahead of Sagittarius, it simply means that no matter how nice all these legal gestures and settlements are, business is business, and people are not going to forget that as well. Okay, what does it mean in December? Well, in December, we are saving the best for last. And that is because one day after Christmas, on December 26th, there is another solar eclipse in Capricorn. And this one's the one you've been waiting for. Remember, we're going to be starting the year with a solar eclipse in Capricorn, and we're also ending the year that way, because the solar eclipse at 4 degrees of Capricorn will involve 5 planets there, and one of them is Jupiter, because Jupiter will move into Capricorn on December 3rd. And they're all going to be trining Uranus in Taurus. So if you have been going along all year, enduring setbacks and enduring delays and being patient and sort of methodical, and still, still you're going to persevere and keep going, even if you have to take detours, even if you have to be extra patient this year, even if you have to save more money, you really probably are going to succeed by next Christmas. It might take you a whole year to build something. I don't mean the building is complete. I really mean that the whole preparation period is complete, and that you're really tied into it, and that it is probably going to represent a rock-solid success. So this is going to be the year when everybody's got to roll up their sleeves and get to work, because we've never had a planetary configuration that was so supportive of building a lasting legacy for yourself or your family or your country, or building something that will last longer than you will. and that upholds traditional values. So I know you can do that. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, you can see the show, read our blog, and hear our podcast on our website, starborninstitute.org. Bye.